Election logistics and political party politics are just some of the hot topics in the media coverage of this year's general elections. This is according to the Media Monitoring Africa's bi-weekly elections media coverage analysis. So the findings covering the period between the 15th to the 28th of March also show that on average of about 35 election stories per day are reported by the SABC, community media and other news media. To talk about the report and the role of monitoring and media during the elections, we are joined by Lister Namumba-Rikhotso, the Program Manager for Monitoring Research and Analysis at the Media Monitoring Africa. Nice to see you, Lister. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Leanne.
So, is it good, the numbers that we're looking at those dates, 35 stories per day on average? Is that satisfactory coverage?
Well, the period that you just quoted, Leanne, is way back, is before now. The coverage has actually improved much more than that now. We're seeing stories averaging around 40, 50 stories per day. And I think it's because we're only a few weeks or a few days, if I can even say, to the election. So definitely coverage has picked up. Okay. There are some issues that are still, lagging, where the media is lagging behind. But in terms of quantity, the coverage has definitely picked up and improved since then.
Okay, good. We're happy to hear that, because I must say, for those of us working in the media, it feels that's all we're speaking about, is trying to assist and help the public in terms of different issues of elections. You know, in fact, and this is a very side note, I mean, I was on I'm always on a sort of a Facebook group where it's a lot of people that are having discussions and they're chatting. And in fact, I only saw last night that somebody pointed out, I cannot believe we're having 3 ballots this year. It's like, we didn't know that. That's something that we're learning for the first time. And this is quite a big grouping of people that come together. And I was reading it with much interest, with people actually agreeing, saying, what do you mean they're 3? I didn't know there were 3. That made me worry a little bit. We're 2 weeks away. Surely we know there are 3 ballots.
Definitely. It is. You might think that a lot of people know, but sadly not. The majority of the electorate doesn't know about any of the election-related issues, because sadly the media coverage has focused on events such as the trail political party campaigning, stories from the campaign trail, political party politics, including internal and external. Sadly, issues such as voter education, service delivery are not featuring significantly on the top topics that is the media is focusing on. And indeed, even just the political candidates themselves are focusing on. Much of it is just on electioneering or politicking. Sadly, we're not seeing much on important issues that are important to the South African electorate, issues such as poverty, unemployment, crime, health, even just voter education. Sadly, we're not seeing much of that in coverage. And we would love, if the media were to report issue-based coverage, rather, so that it's beneficial to the electorate, so that when the South Africans are going to vote, they know exactly who they're voting for and why. Sadly, it's not being unpacked so much in coverage now.
Yeah. Okay. So nice, interesting graphics up, and these obviously are from your sort of percentage and looking at your analysis. But you also found that the voices of academics, of experts, researchers, they garnered a coverage share of about 6% in previous monitoring period. And sadly, this has kind of dropped a little bit to 3%. What does this mean in terms of, well, particularly, I mean, because we're with the SABC, our mandate, and how important these voices actually are in shaping the country's democracy?
They're very important, Leanne, in that when the media is reporting an issue, you need an expert to come and unpack it further for the electorate, for the benefit of the electorate. Sadly, we're not seeing experts, researchers, or people from the academic institutions featuring a lot in coverage. 3% is really low. But when you look at the voice of the public, that's even lower, sadly. So we're hearing more from political party candidates, political parties, at 68%, and then you find that the voice of experts, the voice of the public citizens in this case, is hardly audible in coverage, or is not audible enough in coverage. And you need experts in coverage of elections, because again, elections are, for the people. They are supposed to benefit the people, meaning the media, especially the SABC, when they're reporting anything election related, they have to have, the best interest, if I may put it, of the public at heart, in that the coverage that is being reported has to benefit the electorate at the end of the day. But sadly, the people who would enable that, in this case the experts, are not audible enough in the coverage.
All right. We sort of see 30 years into democracy. I mean, gender inequality. It saddens me that this still features prominently and in your studies, which is good, but it's not showing too much of a big increase, only a 3% increase in female voices in the media coverage, from the 16% recorded in previous monitoring period. So, we're at 19%, that's the actual final. How can we raise women's voices and the coverage more on these programs? Because I must say, when I sit down and we're hosting these, our guests in studio and politicians and political leaders, it's always the men's voice that comes through. It's hardly ever that we see the women coming through. So I see it, and I know what you're looking at.
Indeed. I mean, we can't be talking about gender inequality now, in this day and age, especially where we're coming from. We need to see and hear more women in coverage. 19%, 15%, that's a number that is too low. And the media just needs to step up and access as sources females. We have heard many political parties say or declare that they have 30%, 40%, 50% of their candidates being female. And of course, you will remember that the majority of South Africa, the majority of people in South Africa are female, according to Statistics South Africa. Also, when you look at the records from the IEC, they report that of the registered voters, the majority are female, but sadly we're not hearing them in coverage. So I think the media just has to to be deliberate about seeking voices from females, because we cannot be having men speak on behalf of women, or men speak more than women in coverage, when women make up more, take up a large percentage of the population. And indeed, just even if they didn't take a large population, a percentage in the population, they still need to be visible, because they are affected by the same, if not more, issues, in a country, or especially in a democracy, than men. Not to say that men's voices are not important, but the media has to be deliberate about making sure that the sources in terms of gender are equitable in coverage. We cannot be talking about gender inequality now in this day and age, especially 30 years into democracy. It needs to improve.
Certainly, but I suppose we do take a portion of the blame, because we obviously need to go up more and find voices of women. But a lot of the time, when you approach the political parties and you ask them for representatives to participate in these different panel discussions or facilitations, they send male representatives, and that's something I personally have been seeing. So that's kind of beyond the media's control, and it's what the party wants represented. So that's the story. Just finally, I need to ask you, in terms of the past few elections, we've got to get into the news headlines now, but the media, including the SABC, has been under a lot of scrutiny on how some political parties have been given more coverage as opposed to others. What are the reports saying at the moment?
So the report, the coverage is actually showing equitable coverage in terms of who has, the biggest share or representation in parliament. So, of course, the bigger political parties are taking up or dominating in coverage. You have the ANC topping the list or dominating, followed by, according to what's on the screen right now, followed by the MK party and DA. And we even are happy that the IEC is audible adequately adequately in coverage. But in terms of representation of the different political parties, it's equitable to the representation in Parliament currently. The bigger political parties are getting adequate or enough coverage. Sadly, we're not seeing smaller political parties, and the media maybe can do more in terms of accessing or representing the smaller, not so popular political parties, including the independents. Now we have the independents contesting, so we definitely need to hear from them as well.
Okay.
But it is given that the bigger political parties would definitely get more coverage.
All right, we've got to leave it there, but thank you. Very interesting. Interesting to see how much coverage the MK party is getting, but I wonder if it's got to do with what they're in the news for and all the contesting of the different sort of codes in courts and whatnot, or it's election coverage, not sure. But I suppose coverage is coverage. Lister Namumba-Rikhotso, Program Manager for Monitoring Research and Analysis at Media Monitoring Africa.